liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Cron, would you call the roll?
Casper?
Here.
Mr. Deming?
Here.
Mrs. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Rodoma?
Here.
Mr. Sarnes?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Yardley? Dr. Yarnell?
Here. Thank you. At this point, we will entertain questions and comments from guests. Do we have the sign-in form by chance? I would ask you to state your name and municipality of residence. If you will, please confine your remarks to 3 minutes. I would also note that if you wish to comment on the fields issue, that there will be public comment after Dr. Radigan makes her presentation, and she will attempt to answer any questions at that time as well. So that's up to you, but maybe you want to wait and hear what she has to say. So the first name on here is Dale Yoder. If you want to comment now, or you can wait if it's on the fields, you can comment at the time of the fields discussion. Okay. Mr. Cohen, Ben Cohen, do you want to wait or you want to talk now? Okay. And Mr. Tom Gilligan, now or later? Thank you. Mr. Douglas Matz. Okay. Maddie Penny.
Can't hear her.
I'm the president of South Student Council, and throughout my 3 years of middle school, I've found pride in having high school football games held at my school. My education has been compromised because of it. It has been said that the high school football games at South impose significant limitations on the South students, but I haven't felt that way, so I want to give the South students a voice. On Tuesday, March 11th, I conducted a survey asking the South students their opinion on the high school using a football field for their games. It was a simple survey, just ask them if they like it being held at our school or if they don't. I asked 20 random students from each grade to participate. After tallying up the results, it was clear that South students love to have the games at their school. The results for each grade were 19 in favor and 1 not, and out of 60 students, only 3 said that they do not like the football games at their school. Please understand that we as South students not only enjoy having the football games at our school, but we also find a great sense of pride in it. Throughout this process, I found many different things out about the true legacy of Papa Yoder. He devoted his life to help others, and he influenced many students and athletes in the Pennridge community. It would be a shame to let part of his amazing legacy die on my generation. Please consider the South students and their pride we have gained through carrying on Papa Yoder's legacy. Thank you.
Next would be Eric Schmidt. Joe Ferruto is next, but I'll ask him to wait since he's giving the student liaison report from the high school. Charles Healy.
That when we are facing a revenue
revenue shortfall of $10 million for the school year starting July 1, and we have $21 million of building repairs to do, and we are having to borrow $10 million to do these repairs. How can we be talking about spending another $3 million on a new stadium at the high school? The taxpayers are also facing large increases in real estate taxes to fund the ever-increasing pension costs, 21% of payroll, and climbing to 31% of payroll. What is 31% of payroll? I guess it's around $21 million that we have to pay towards the pension. Is that $21 million something we have? We have to be prioritizing our spending in these times and operate frugally, only spending on what's absolutely necessary. A new stadium at the high school might be nice to have, but it is not a necessity, certainly not in these times. You are asking too much of your senior citizens, homeowners, and other unemployed homeowners barely getting by on unemployment checks and food stamps. I don't know what's going on through your heads to want to ignore the realities of what's going on around you. For now, until the pension problem is addressed by the state, we need to just fix what's needed to be fixed at Yoder Field, the bleachers and some drainage work, and get by until better days. I ask the board members tonight to table any motion to move ahead on any field issues and give some serious thought to what this district and the taxpayers can afford to do.
Thank you. Sam Yothers, I apologize. Okay. And Jennifer Yothers. Joan Cullen.
Joan Cullen from Hilltown Township. I'll just get it over with now since I think I'm in the minority. But I wanted to start by thanking the board for the thought they've put into the stadium decision. As someone who sat through many of the hours that you spent talking about it, I know it's not something that you're taking lightly, and you're in a tough spot, and I appreciate the thought that you've put into it so far. So thank you. Over the years, Pennridge High School has been in at least 3 different buildings that I know of. Blooming Glen, 5th Street, which is now South Middle School, and also the former high school that was on this property here. I'm sure it was difficult for those who had to leave their old buildings when the new ones were built, but we all know that change is inevitable in a growing community. They moved, life went on, new traditions were formed, and I think it's time again for change to accommodate our growth. I love Yoder and its small town feel. I'm a nostalgic person. I like to keep history alive, but I'm also practical. So I think we need to focus on the future opportunities here because this is a 40-year decision that you're making. I came to see Aida here last week, which probably many of you did too. And as I sat here in this auditorium, a thought occurred to me, which was, if we held on to tradition at all costs, we would all be squished in probably the South Middle School auditorium, sitting there in that facility, watching the musical instead of here in this nice, beautiful facility that we have for the theater students. Just as it wouldn't make sense to have our high school students in one of our old buildings, it doesn't make good sense to have our high school students continue to play over at Yoder. We could both renovate Yoder into something that's usable and build a stadium on the high school campus for a little more than the price of bringing only Yoder up to today's standards. That would double our practice and play space. In addition, having a stadium on the high school campus opens the door for new opportunities and traditions. For example, our children could possibly have their graduation at their own school instead of trekking up to the impersonal Stabler Arena. We could also host PIAA and other events that we're currently ineligible for due to the limitations of our facilities. That would bring revenue to the district. Just as Pennridge High School outgrew its previous homes in Blooming Glen, the current South Middle School, and finally the older building on this campus, it has also outgrown Poppy Yoder. I think we can preserve Poppy Yoder for use by South and other groups, and also incorporate Poppy memories and traditions into a new stadium at the high school campus in a way that will benefit all of us for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Rush. Thanks. Gary Keaton? I'm sorry. Okay. Anyone else before we start the meeting? If not, we'll move to the consent calendar. Are there any of the items listed in section 5 that board members want voted on separately? Mrs. Yardley? Personnel report? So item J. Anyone else? If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar consisting of items A through I, not including the superintendent's personnel report?
Oh, here's the first one.
I have that, this A through H.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is I. Is what I have.
Nobody's proposed.
I is the personnel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, then A through H we will vote on if we have a motion.
I so move. Second.
Moved by Mr. Denning and seconded by Mr. Sarnes to approve the consent calendar excluding the superintendent's personnel report. Comments or questions from board members? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Next, do we have a motion to approve the superintendent's personnel report?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarnes, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the superintendent's personnel report. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Yardley?
Yeah, I had questions today about the student help was hired, and not all of my questions were answered, so I was wondering if we could remove that part and vote on that at the next meeting. To be Mr. Scarpantonia.
I think what we would do is vote on the motion, and if enough people want to, unless someone wants to move to table this, vote on the motion, and then replace it with the motion later at the next meeting.
Well, I mean, my question is, why a student is getting paid the same as teachers get paid for writing curriculum. That I had, and it wasn't really answered, just that it's been done that way before, so.
I can't answer that question directly, but I would say that generally speaking, people are paid for the job that they do. And in the case of the curriculum writing, that is a contractual issue that we bargain with the faculty each and every time we open contract negotiations. So I think they're kind of apples and oranges, not apples and apples or oranges and oranges. My personal opinion. Anyone else? If not,
If we
Mr. Casper?
don't vote on it, what is there something that's going to stop? Is there a cost? Is there a ramification of tabling this until the 8th? It's a pretty good. I think it's a decent question.
Mr. Scarpantonio's shaking his head. I assume that means no.
My
Specific implication.
My question is, we are probably required under the EDR's requirements for what we're paying the teachers for that's a contractual thing. I assume that this is not contractual with the students, so I think we could change that every time and choose to change it. Is that right or wrong?
Ryan, do you have an opinion on that?
I'm not sure the answer. That sounds like it could be correct, but we don't have any contractual.
It's also backdated to February 21st, which I don't understand either.
In terms of the backdating part, I would simply say that there are numbers of items on an agenda that date back either to the last board meeting or sometimes just before the last board meeting, because if they don't come to the administration in time, they don't come before us until the next board meeting. So there are other issues here. There's at least one employee who is out on temporary leave. He's left and come back, and we're approving that tonight too.
It doesn't appear to me that this is controlled by the collective. Oh, there. That's correct? It doesn't appear to me that the amount of paid to the student help. Yeah, I think that once you hire him for that amount, then you hire him for that amount. You don't hire him for that amount. And
Is this a contract that we have with these students?
What was the amount agreed upon when they started the work? That was an agreed upon, Amy, amount? Are we switching this in midstream?
If I could just speak one more time here. The Pennridge School District 2013-14 request for use of school facilities has the clause in it that says lighting system in the high school auditorium must be operated by school personnel and the cost will be billed to the lessee. So if somebody fills this format to use the auditorium, the cost of sound and lighting is billed to that. So
What you're saying is we're approving a rate, not a cost to the taxpayers or the district.
technically, the district is paying that amount. However, if the lessee gets billed, billed the cost of the use of their facility.
To say, from my research, just real quickly, because I saw some of the emails going back and forth, apparently this issue went back until 2008 is when we started paying $25 an hour. So it's not a new rate. It's a rate that's been in effect for this the AV person since 2008.
Unless I have a motion to table, I would want to call the question.
So I'd like to move to, do I table just that part of it? I can do that in the
By
personnel
vote,
report?
because the rest of it, unless you object to it, we would like to pass.
I move to table the item on page 12, student health.
A second? Okay. At this point, let's vote to table or not to table. All those in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion fails 2-7, I believe. I'm correct? Okay. Then let's go back to the original motion, which was to approve the superintendent's personnel report as it stands. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 7-2. Thank you. At this point, we'll move on to the president's report. I simply wanted to note, in light of some of the comments that have been made in recent times and some of the things that have happened recently, in reading the News Herald, I don't believe it's this week's, but a prior week, I noted some things that sounded very familiar. One is, in the 10-year ago column that they run on their second section, they talked about emphasizing the numbers are very preliminary. This Pennridge School District presented an initial $82 million budget for 2004-2005, and it called for a 31.88 bill tax increase. Obviously, that didn't happen. So sometimes preliminary budgets are a bit larger than the final budgets by far. On a more positive note, I would say that this also included a note that William Sarnes from Hilltown was appointed to fill a vacancy on the Pennridge School Board. I'd like to thank Mr. Sarnes for 10 years of fine service. 20 years ago, the Pennridge School District stated that it will hold classes on Good Friday in 2 weeks, but Saturday classes and extended school days are likely not to be scheduled to make up for all the last days this year. This is particularly pertinent because we have received numerous emails about the school calendar. So we're going to talk about that to a degree tonight. For those of you who are as old as I am, you will remember that the year 1994 was a particularly bad year. We not only had a faculty strike that year, but we had more days of inclement weather that resulted in school not being held than occurred this year. We ran school literally until the last day of the calendar year. And even that didn't get in the minimum 180 days that had to be petitioned to the state. So this is not new, and this will happen again, I would predict, at some point down the line. It may be 20 years from now or maybe not. And there have been other bad years throughout the time that I have lived in the district when snow has, and other events such as Hurricane Sandy have intervened in holding school. And lastly, I would note that 40 years ago, the column talks about the Pennridge School Board was presented with a petition Monday night by a group of area residents seeking busing for kindergarten students in the district. That too is not a new issue. We hear that pretty much every year, but usually not at this time of year, usually in the fall. So in terms of some of these things, I'd just like to say that they are issues that come around more frequently than you might imagine. And sometimes the answer is the same each and every time. At this point, I'd like to move to the student liaison report. Joe Ferruta, if you would come to the microphone and give us your report.
Good evening, guys. I'm from the student council, the treasurer of the student council. Right now, we are planning events such as Mr. Pennridge and the spring breakfast. They're coming up on April 17th. They're on the same day. The spring breakfast usually has a lot of community members come out, and it's been held for many years now. So we're looking forward to that. And then Mr. Pennridge is a newer event. Some of you may remember it. The last time it was ran, I think it was 2006, and we're bringing that back. It's a male beauty pageant. Very fun event. I heard about from some past student council grads, and we're bringing that back, and there's a lot of excitement about that in the school right now. Some past event was the 10th grade exec council ran a laser tag event, which I heard was very successful and exciting. 2 weeks ago we had Pie Day, where Mr. Schoonover was pied in the face as we raised money with that idea. So there's a lot of energy in the school right now, and a lot of people are excited for upcoming events, and as prom's being planned right now by our exec councils, there's a lot of excitement. So things are going well in the high school, and that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be the superintendent's report. Dr. Radigan.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Yarnell. First, I'd like to thank the Diebler Elementary School for their presentations in the boardroom display. And once again, this month I have some wonderful news to share about Pennridge former graduates and current students. Our biannual Wall of Fame induction is scheduled for tomorrow night in the cafeteria. This year's honorees are Honorable John J. Roof, class of 1957, Keith Gottschall, class of 1969, Barbara White Stack, class of 1972, Randall Stauffer, class of 1979, Colonel Catherine L. Colby, class of 1986, and Gerald P. Schlosser, class of 2000. It is really an impressive group, and I encourage you to visit our website to read more about their accomplishments. You will all be Pennridge proud. A couple of other notes about alumni. Graduate Melissa Hefner, class of 1993, will be inducted into the Bucks County Sports Hall of Fame next month. Melissa played field hockey and lacrosse at Pennridge and the University of Delaware, where she was one of the top 2 sport athletes in the school's history. The induction will be on April 10th at King's Caterers in Lower Bucks County. Meanwhile, Jimmy Wallach, class of 2006, has been named public address announcer for the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. Jimmy is a frequent substitute teacher in our schools. The Pennridge Community Ed Foundation has announced its Friends of Education Award winners for 2014. They are Diebler Principal Deb Brady and Susie Wolfinger, Secretary to Principal Tom Runner at Penn Central. Congratulations, Mrs. Brady and Mrs. Wolfinger. Again, I encourage you to visit the Foundation's website to learn more about these wonderful district employees. They will be honored at a lovely evening at the Sellersville Theater on April 29th. Tickets are $20, and that includes entertainment by Pennridge students. All proceeds go to support PCEF's Classroom Innovation Grants. Congratulations to Chris Dyer, a business education teacher at the high school and second-year student council advisor. He has been named Pennsylvania Association of Student Council's Region 2 Advisor of the Year. He is now in the running for Advisor of the Year in the entire state of Pennsylvania. Good luck, Mr. Dyer. In February, 2 Pennridge siblings achieved the highest rank possible in scouting. Junior Colby Kramer earned Eagle Scout for a project at the Percy Dog Park, while his older sister Kendra, a 2013 graduate, earned Gold Scout for organizing a week-long music program at the Rosebud Native American Reservation in South Dakota. Kendra is a freshman at Moravian College. Junior Nick Callums was among 134 students in the region to receive a leadership award in a program sponsored by Widener University and WCAU TV NBC 10. These students have demonstrated academic excellence and character traits that mark them as potential leaders and future citizens of character. Winners will receive a scholarship of $20,000 over 4 years should they enroll at Widener University for undergraduate studies. State Rep Paul Clymer stopped by Sellersville Elementary School recently to recognize 5th grader Abby McNavage for having her artwork included in the Attorney General's 2014 drug-free calendar. Abby's artwork was chosen from among more than 720 entries from 210 schools in 52 counties throughout the Commonwealth, based on the artist's creativity and ability to illustrate and convey a drug-free message. This past weekend, I had the privilege of attending 3 different events here at the high school, and let me tell you, it was quite an experience. First, we had the high school spring musical, Aida. I'm a big Elton John fan, so I had high expectations, but believe me, it was even better than I could have imagined. The production quality was amazing, the costumes, the set, the sound system, everything about it. The performances, I'll tell you, they were just unbelievable. What a talented group. So kudos to everyone involved, including the students and parents. Also the same day, we had the indoor drumline and color guard show sponsored by the Pennridge Music Association. There were about 18 high school and college groups on this campus. Again, it was an amazing group of talented students who put a lot of hard work into their performance, and I had the privilege of giving out some of the awards. Finally, there was the district art show on Sunday, and there was much creativity in all different types of media. It was great to see the students taking so much pride in their work. So I'm happy to say that the arts are alive and well at Pennridge. Congratulations to everyone. We have with us this evening Ms. Joanne Parati from the Bucks County Intermediate Unit. She is going to give a brief presentation to us on the comprehensive planning process, which as a district we are required to take part in. We are a Phase 3 district and our plan is due in November. So the board, we will have to move down to the audience in order to see this presentation. Thank you, Ms. Parati.
screen's coming down. Sorry. I thought the screen was coming down.
Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Radigan said, my name is Joanne Parati. I'm the Director of Strategic Services at the Bucks County Intermediate Unit. Thank you on behalf of the Board of Directors and for the community. And I said to Dr. Radigan when I walked in tonight, I was so excited everyone came out tonight to hear about the comprehensive plan. But what I'd like to do tonight is give you an overview of the comprehensive planning process. When an organization begins comprehensive planning, they start with this screen in mind. And the slide here, you're seeing dreams, visions, and ideas. And so for every school district, each and every one of you sitting here in the audience, the school board members, the staff, the students, all of you do have dreams and visions and ideas for the Pennridge School District. The comprehensive planning process takes those dreams and visions and ideas and turns them into action, doing, and operational pieces. 6 years ago, the Pennridge School District embarked on a strategic plan that's required by the Department of Education. And out of the results of that strategic plan came this mission statement. And I'll just give you a second for you to read it to yourselves. This mission statement is not generic. This is specific to the Pennridge School District. So as we begin the process this year of comprehensive planning, we look back on this mission and we still ask the question, is this still us? Is this still us in the Pennridge School District? We also look at where we have been, where we are now, and where we want to go in the future. So these are some of the highlights as we looked at the previous strategic plan that we've been working on for the past 6 years. And so we take that, we look at what we accomplished, what's still relevant, and how we can turn that into the new comprehensive plan. I think it's important for you to know where we have been with the process, and the Department of Education, from the compliance piece, this is the way we submitted a strategic plan 6 years ago. And every 6 years there was an academic standards and assessment plan. Then every 3 years we had a professional ed plan. Every 6 years a teacher induction plan. Every 3 years a student services plan. Every 3 years a special education plan. And every 3 years an educational technology plan. Well, back in 2010, the Department of Education started doing some research, some focus groups, started looking at different advisory groups, and they said, let's look at the way we're doing planning in school districts. And they came to the conclusion that there should be a comprehensive process. Instead of having silos with developing plans, to take and streamline the process into one comprehensive plan. So they looked at what we used to do, and they said, we don't want to do it that way anymore. But rather, what we want to do is have a single streamlined process in which you look at all those areas at once. And so the way we started doing the process is looking at all the schools in Pennridge School District. And this happens to be a slide from the Department of Education. So in some districts there might be 2 schools, other districts there might be 20 schools, some schools might have 7. But we look at all the schools and what are the strengths, what are the challenges, what are the threats, what are the opportunities, and then from there we build the district level plan. These are the components of the comprehensive plan as we are starting this process this year. We're looking at the mission, the shared values, the educational community, and I'll talk about the district level plan and planning team in a second. This is really the meat and potatoes of the comprehensive plan. These are the core foundations that we work on. We look at standards, the curriculum, the instruction, the assessment, safe and supportive schools, materials and resources, professional education, and special education. This really is the core foundation that makes up our plan. So it's important for you to see as a community, as a board, and as members of the Pennridge School District, what is happening with this comprehensive plan. As Dr. Radigan mentioned, you're a Phase 3 district, and what that basically means is there are 500 school districts in Pennsylvania. They are divided into thirds, and then every county is divided into thirds. So you happen to be a Phase 3 district because we divided the county into thirds. So we start out this school year meeting with the superintendent to detail the process. And the interesting fact, this is much different than strategic planning of 6 years ago. This is a 109-page document that the district administrative staff have been working on since the fall with all the components of comprehensive planning. We've been having meetings with the cabinet. Tonight's an overview of the process. Again, I'll be back in the district working with the cabinet and the leadership team. In addition, while all this was going on, right now, if you went to your website, on the front page, the special ed plan is on display for 28 days for public review. That's the component of the comprehensive plan. We continue on to May 8th of this year, where we'll be bringing in a representative group of the Pennridge community, parents, students, teachers, business, community, board members. So we have a representative team coming together to look at the framework of the plan. We'll be developing action teams in May, and then in the spring and summer, we'll be developing those plans in even more detail. With the end in mind, the plan has to be submitted on November 30th of 2014. If we back it up a month, the school board needs to approve it in the fall, and then we back it up even further, and again, this plan will be on display for 28 days for the public to review. The most important thing about this plan is to make the main thing the main thing. And this will be a 3-year plan this time. It's not a 6-year plan. So we're going to be very focused on what we need to do for every child that goes to school here in the Pennridge School District. Thank you very much.
Dr. Yoder wanted to let me know that it's okay that we're going to go a little bit out of order on our agenda. Facilities was a little bit further down, but since the board is already in the audience and we know we have students here who are anxious to get home to do their homework, we're going to move this part up to the beginning of our meeting. So what we have here tonight is a recommendation, future of Papa Yoder Field and the Hellman Track and Field. Now, I've only been here for 7 months, but I hear that this situation, or this dilemma, I'll call it, has been going on for quite some time. So, knowing that, I did quite a bit of research, and I've been talking to a lot of different people, and the administrators and I are now ready to make a recommendation to the board. And why are we doing that? Well, this January, we had a bleacher inspection, which we're required to have every 4 years. And unfortunately, the report was not very good. It came back saying that our bleachers at Papa Yoder are unsafe. So as someone said, I think it was Mrs. Cullen, there have been hours of discussion at various meetings about what to do with this situation. So really we're under a deadline, because if we want to play on any field, Papa Yoder or Hellman Field, in the fall, we need to make really a decision tonight about what to do with the bleachers. So the board has asked the administration to come up with a recommendation. So that's all it is from us, a recommendation. They have the tough task of deciding if they want to accept this. So let me proceed. A little bit of the background history. The field at Papa Yoder was originally known as the athletic field at South Middle School. And in 1930, that's when people started playing football on that field, which could certainly explain why everyone thinks this is such a tradition. That's a long time. Then in 1954, the high school was built on this campus. That being said, football stayed at the South Middle School campus. In 1972, the field at South Middle School was then named the Papa Yoder Field in honor of Papa Yoder, who was a coach, beloved coach for many years and teacher. In 2008, the turf field was put in up here at the high school. And even though in 1989, the field up here was named after another gentleman, Mr. Hellman, it was in 1989 that they decided to name it the Hellman Track and Field. So that's a little bit of the history. Now what's the background? What are some of the issues? Well, the bleachers have been an issue at Papa Yoder for a while. As I said, they've been examined and reevaluated every 4 years. 4 years ago, they were not in the greatest of shape, and some money was put into them to repair them. But everyone, I think, knew that that was not going to last forever. Parking has always been a problem at the South Middle School. They just do not have the amount of parking or parking lots, for example, like there are here at the high school. The South Middle School students sometimes have been bumped off of their field because of the fact that there may be a football game coming that night. So they have maybe had to miss gym classes, phys ed classes, or even their own sports. They have been transported from there to the high school so that the field at their school could be used for the football team. The middle school facilities, as we heard from Dr. McAllister and Dr. Rudder, have taken a beating over the years. They really don't have the team rooms that you would expect for two high school teams to compete against one another. So what has happened? They've had to use hallways and the gym. And even though a protective floor is put down, it doesn't always cover what needs to be covered, so there's cleat marks and the lockers have been damaged and things of that sort. Also, it's been extra work on the custodians at that school because after a game, there's a lot that they have to do. As I said, busing has been an issue, and this is a cost, I learned as well. You just don't take the band and the football team from one location to another and not have to pay for that. There is a cost involved. Another background issue is that people absolutely, the pro is, they love the closeness of the bleachers to the field because everybody feels like they're literally in the game. And actually they almost are. You could probably walk out of your stadium seat and be on the field. But what worried me when I would go to the games, I would see players running out of bounds. The cheerleaders would be right there with their backs to the players. There'd be senior citizens walking around with their hot dogs and hamburgers, and I was seeing, thinking, oh my goodness, if anybody runs out of bounds, they're going to knock these people over. So I've seen pros and cons, and I've heard pros and cons of the bleacher closeness. The way the field is configured because of where the bleachers are, it's made it difficult and really unsafe to play lacrosse there. Apparently that happened a few years ago and it was deemed unsafe, so it's kind of ruled out that field as a backup for high school lacrosse. And one of the big problems over time has been the field conditions. If you remember the storm Sandy, the hurricane, that year was a very rainy fall and summer, and apparently a lot of the games couldn't even be played there because the field was so bad. There were a lot of drainage issues there. So those are some of the background issues. All right, what's the current status? What's happening right now? Well, as I said, in January there was a bleacher inspection which showed that the bleachers are unsafe. They were not condemned, but it also means that if somebody uses them and they fall, we would be liable because we know it's a problem. Probably couldn't have learned that at a worse time because our preliminary budget numbers showed that we had quite a deficit, and we do, and we are working hard as an administration to figure out a way to be sure by June 30th with the board that we have a balanced budget. So when we learned this information, we came up with about 9 different options, which we shared with you at other meetings. What could we do in this situation? 3 of the options were immediately taken off the table because they involved repairing the bleachers. And the board members did not feel it was cost effective to do that because it was a lot of money and they would only last about 10 years to repair them, whereas brand new bleachers last about 30 to 40 years. This whole situation has created a lot of community unrest, which is very sad because, as I said from when I first got here, I feel just the warmness and the closeness of this community, but right now I feel the tension and it's really kind of sad. As a result, a lot of different stakeholder groups have weighed in with their opinions on what they think we should do. I know the board has been inundated with phone calls and emails, as I have. We've heard from many longtime residents who want to preserve the tradition of the football games in Papa Yoder. We have the high school football team and coaches. They would like to continue to play their games there. We've heard from parents and students and players of other sports who are embarrassed by the fact that the Hellman track and field was not completed properly, and they want funds invested in that location. I've heard from families of both the Yoder and the Hellman family who want to be sure the names of their family members continue to be honored. We've heard from the South Middle School administration and staff about they would like to have the same access to their facilities as the other 2 middle schools. Sometimes they feel like stepchildren when they are bounced out of their own facilities. In these tight budget times, the administration is concerned that unnecessary costs are being incurred. For example, when we transport students to other campuses. We've heard from many taxpayers who are on fixed incomes. They don't want their taxes raised, let alone have to fund sports facilities. So needless to say, this creates quite a dilemma. It's hard to please everyone. However, that being said, the board knows that a decision is imminent if we hope to play any sports at either field in the fall. So henceforth, I am showing you now the recommendation that the administration feels is something that we could all hopefully live with. Something that could make everyone get a piece, hopefully, of what they want. So, if we look at Papa Yoder Field, our recommendation, and if you see this symbol next to it, it means this is optional. Fix the lights at Papa Yoder. The reason I say optional, it's because even though we may say we can play football there, we don't know if we want to play it at night or not. Let me go on and I'll explain a little bit more. We suggest that we demolish the existing bleachers because, as I said, they are unsafe. Move the bleachers from the high school to Papa Yoder. Right now, they seat about 600 people. They are movable bleachers that we could move to the Papa Yoder field. We may wish to purchase more bleachers. I learned that we could get ones that are 10 rows high that are ADA compliant. Right now we have ones that are 5 rows high if you've been up at the Hellman track and field. Recommend setting the bleachers back 15 feet aside, as this would allow for lacrosse to play that field as an option. Basically allow the football team to play 1 home game a year in honor of tradition at this field. Rent a press box so that the game could be broadcast as it has been over the years. And pay the cost to transport the team and the band to Papa Yoder for this 1 home game a year. We really believe as an administration that the Hellman track and field, which is a beautiful field, could give us, as Mrs. Cullen, I believe, said, a real sense of where we are in the year 2014. So we're suggesting to build the new stands there with the press box with a minimum of 3,000 seats. All of these items you're going to see up here are minimums because it's going to be up to the board to decide. When the bids go out, it may be more cost effective, for example, to build 4,000 seats or 5,000 seats. But the reason we picked 3,000 is because we looked at the history of the football games over the last 5 years. They range in number from 603 guests
at the Lansdale Catholic 2011 game to 2,979 guests at the 2009 Quakertown game. So they've been under 3,000 every home game for the last 5 years. We are suggesting purchasing 3 sheds for ticket booths because we are envisioning 3 parking lots that could feed people up to the stands. This is a much more cost-effective way than actually putting in permanent ones that are cement. And we would obviously need access lanes and ambulance access. All of these are minimums because the drawings that I saw that took place a couple years ago showed another parking lot next to the tennis courts. So again, what we are looking at here is the minimum things that you could do to get both fields up and running by the fall, with the Hellman Field as the main field and the Papa Yoder Field as the backup field. So what are the advantages to this proposal? It basically, as I said, would give you 2 fields ready for play. If the board votes tonight to build the bleachers, we would have 2 fields ready for play for the fall. We believe that it does preserve tradition. Even though it's only 1 game a year, remember there are many factors that had to be weighed into this, and it could be a celebration of that field every year over time. It also shows respect for the middle school at South. Therefore, they won't be bumped off of their field as much and have to be bused elsewhere, and therefore that provides equity among the middle schools. Right now, they do not have the same advantage that Central and North do. This approach costs actually less than a full completion of either field, but it allows play on both fields. And because our recommendation is to form an ad hoc board committee on fundraising and advertising, we believe it encourages the community to come together to look at ways they could help support the long-term facility needs. So we call this kind of an adopt a project. And the reason we say all of these are optional, the board may decide when they see the bids that these things don't need to be fundraised or advertised. But for example, possibly a wall of fame at the Hellman Field honoring both Mr. Yoder and Mr. Hellman. So you could have some fundraising there and show their support for the unity of the 2 fields. Team locker rooms. When this goes out to bid, it actually would be less expensive if we went out to bid for the locker rooms, the concession stand, and the restrooms. But we could use a deduct approach and say, okay, well, the team locker rooms we'll pay for maybe through advertising or fundraising. Something else that either the board can decide to add now or later is additional parking and handicap access, which I discussed before. 3 permanent ticket booths, the ones that I talk about that are temporary, if you decide to build 3 permanent ones, could then be moved to other places around the district. A new scoreboard, add 1,000 or 2,000 more seats. Now again, if the board decides to go with 4,000 seats at the start, then maybe you don't need more, or maybe they would want somebody to fundraise for 1,000 more. At the Papa Yoder Field, all of these are optional. The concession stand, it's doable right now, it gets by, but you probably could use another one. New lights, if you just repair the lights at Papa Yoder, that's a short term of about 3 or 4 years. You have to decide, or the board has to decide, when are they going to play these games? If the high school is going to play 1 home game a year, is it going to be a night game or is it going to be a day game? That may decide if you need the lights fixed at all. Also a new scoreboard, again, an optional item, and the additional temporary stands. I did find out that across the district, if, for example, we played a home game at Papa Yoder, we would have the 600 seats from bringing the stands over from the high school, and probably a total of about 2,100 seats if you brought stands from all of the other schools around the district. And lastly, not to forget, this is a whole district project. If you had an all-weather track at Central Middle School, that could be shared with South Middle School. Right now, the North students share the high school track. But that's been something that I've heard over time has been a much-needed item. So this last slide is just a repeat of what you already saw. It's a summary of the administration's recommendation that we are presenting to the board. And I will leave that up here if we can. Actually, probably not. Mr. Smith, do we have to put the screen up? Maybe they'll still be able to see it on the curtain. But I think the board now will need to go back up because I think, Dr. Yoder, we're going to open it for public comment.
At this point, as Dr. Radigan mentioned, we will return to public comment on the fields issue. If you will, same rules as before. Please state your name, your municipality of residence, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Presumably, we should start with the same list as was originally put forth. So, Dale Yoder.
I'm Dale Yoder. Papa Yoder was my father, and since it's been almost 50 years since my father's gone, some of the individuals have asked me to come here tonight and share a few memories and a brief history of my father's life. With your permission, I'll proceed. My dad told me many years ago that to be remembered, you need to make your mark. Well, here's the mark my dad made, according to me. He was born in 1905 on a farm near Bloomington. He was educated in the one-room schools at Hilltown to begin with, and then came to Percy High in 1924 because Hilltown had no senior year for their students. Lifetime friends have told me that at Percy High, he was a remarkable success. Outstanding scholar, popular student leader, brilliant athlete, and all-star in football, basketball, baseball, and track. He could do it all. He attended Millersville Normal School after graduation, gained his teaching degree, and then returned to the district to be part of the Hilltown Pennridge area for the rest of his life. My dad contributed many things to the Pennridge area, but first and foremost, he was an educator. He believed education took place not only in the classroom, but in the athletic arena as well. In the classroom, he was dedicated, well-prepared, inspiring, and fair-minded. His students loved and respected him. He was a highly successful coach with many winning teams, but winning was not his main goal. He wanted his athletes to be good sportsmen, emphasizing fair play, honesty, integrity. Field goals and base hits were easily forgotten, but the values he emphasized stayed with the athletes for a lifetime. No greater testimony to my dad's success as an educator. First, in 1957, he was selected as the outstanding teacher in all of Bucks County. In 1990, he was one of the original group to be inducted into the then newly formed Quakertown Pennridge Athletic Hall of Fame. And countless former students and players have said to me, your dad was the most important person in our lives. Let me share some of his unique coaching activities. At Hilltown, where we first returned, he resurrected the moribund baseball program. He started the basketball and soccer programs. He coached all sports without any assistants. He advised the women coaches on the women's sports. He made up the schedules. He hired the officials. With no maintenance crew, He was the groundskeeper for the baseball diamond. He was in charge of the school's magazine drive, which was the main source of funds supporting the athletics. When the community hall, the former basketball court, was turned into an agricultural center, he raised funds and worked side by side with volunteers to erect a new gym. He spent countless hours shopping for new uniforms and new equipment. And underscoring this yeoman's service, he received no extra compensation. His salary would have been the same if he spent his afternoons working in his garden. After the Pennridge consolidation, he was named assistant football coach on the great Pennridge teams of Ray Wistful and Wayne Hellman. He was head baseball coach and then head basketball coach, all at Pennridge. After retiring from active coaching, he remained closely associated with Pennridge athletics and a close friend and counselor to all of the new young coaches. He helped the Pennridge area in other ways. His role as father to the Welcome House children who were on a collision course with a life of despair, and he and my mother provided them with a loving home. This was the beginning of major social reform that brought Asian Americans into what sociologists now call the Asians as the model minority. He was a church leader. He was a fundraiser for many community activities, Penn Foundation for one. He was the director of so many community drama performances, and on and on and on. He seemed to have somehow found the 40-hour day. Is it any wonder that so many have said to me he was the most important person in my life? Let me close with a personal comment. Without hesitation or reservation, but with a great deal of pride, I say to you, my father was the greatest man I've ever known. He made his mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yoder, you are still from Reading, correct? Thank you. I would also note that Mr. Yoder wrote a history of the Pennridge School District for the 50th anniversary, which occurred just about 10 years ago, the consolidation, that is, and from there forward. Next, we'll hear from Ben Cohen.
I'd like to start off saying that I'm a strong advocate.
We need your name and municipality, please.
Ben Cohen, West Rock Hill Township.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off saying that I am a strong advocate for keeping Pop Yoder. I'm currently a senior at Pennridge High School. I've been going to Pennridge since first grade, and for as long as I can remember, you taught me in your schools that I live in a country that with a representative democracy. You taught us representative democracy is a form of government where the people elect officials who will represent their interests, listen, and follow through with their opinions on issues. We elect representatives on 3 levels: national, state, and local, such as this very school board. What I don't understand is if we live in representative democracy, like you're telling me, then why, as elected officials whose duties is to represent the community, are you not representing us and doing as we ask? We asked you to keep the Pop Yoder community tradition a staple to Pennridge culture. The majority of the community wants it, as you can see by everyone in attendance here tonight. I lost my page here. And there is an online Facebook petition that as of 34 this afternoon has at least 683 likes and followers. However, you are not representing that, nor do you even seem to care about one of the most iconic things that represents Pennridge. I don't know who you are representing, but it's not the people who voted you in. When it comes to representing representative democracies, either your curriculum or your actions are wrong. Overall, I'm a little confused as to what you're teaching us in schools, because your actions out here in the real world are contradicting to what you're teaching us in the classroom. This is why I'm confused. I don't think democracy is meant censoring opinions. Thank you.
Gilligan.
I live in Berkshire, Pennsylvania. I want to ask a question to the younger generation, even today. Who is your role model? To me, Papa Yoder was or is my role model. I met him when I was in 6th grade, and in 7th, and that was in 1965. That was 49 years ago. As a 6th grader, I met him. I started 7th grade over here at Central Junior High. It was my 7th grade year was the first year that it was opened. So it was a brand new school. Pennridge had one junior high at that point, and it was just called Pennridge Junior High. And then it became 2 junior highs, one south and one central. So I was part of the first class that started over at Central. And Papa Yoder was my math teacher in 7th and 8th grade. And I also attended or joined his public speaking class as well. So I wanted to spend more time with him, because I knew that he could teach me things that I couldn't learn any other way. In the fall of 1967, I was in 9th grade, and November 11th, 1967 was the saddest day of my life. And that was the day Papa Yoder passed away. It just devastated me. I was only 15 years old, and things at that age affect you for life. And it still affects me even today. Let me move on to something else here. In 1972, the class of 72 elected for a class project to rename the field over at South, Papa Yoder Field, in his memory and in his honor. A lot of the kids in that class were like 7th or 8th or 9th grade, or 7th or 8th grade students when he passed away. So they knew him at a young age, and they admired him. And that's one of the reasons why they felt it was a class project to dedicate that field in his memory. And they put up a bronze plaque and things like that. That was done, the field was dedicated on September 22nd, 1972. We were playing Souderton that night. I was in the service, so I wasn't even around. But I read about it, I heard about it. And just last week, I'm not sure why I thought of this, I thought to myself, why was it dedicated that night when we played Souderton? As respected as Papa Yoder was in the Pennridge area, he was just as respected over in Souderton. He had many friends. He went to church in the Souderton area. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they picked that particular game, to dedicate the field in his honor.
Mr. Gilligan, can you finish, Sue, please?
Yes, sorry. There's a game that some people like to play. Who would you invite in history to a dinner that you would like to meet or be in the presence of? And my list of people, one would be Abraham Lincoln, another would be Martin Luther King Jr., another would be Jesus Christ, and another would be Papa Yoder. I'm almost done. You just heard from Dale Yoder. In 1999, he wrote a book about his. The title of the book is Pearl Buck's Living Legacy. The Welcome Home Story. I try to read my Bible at least once a year. This book has been out for about 14, 15 years. I've read it 5 times. Every time I read it, I learn more about this person that I honor and respect. And I read it last summer once again. I wish everyone in the Pennridge community would read that book. You would learn and know who Papa Yoder really was. And you would respect him to a higher degree than you perhaps now know. And a lot of you don't even know who he really is. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Douglas Matz.
Questions I have are more related to the analysis of the different proposals. The turf field was built in '08, and if I'm not mistaken, the life expectancy of that field is about 10 to 12 years. So in the cost analysis, was the replacing of the turf field brought into that analysis? And as far as I'm concerned, it should have been. When you're trying to compare apples to apples.
Is that your only question?
Well, that's one question. And the other question was with the bleachers from the district that you could bring to Papa Yoder Field for the one game. Why couldn't we put them up here until Papa Yoder was taken care of and refurbished? And that's pretty much all I have.
Dr. Radigan, do you want to comment? Okay. We will try to answer both of those questions. Dr. Radigan has taken notes, and we will attempt to do that at the end. Let's move on to Eric Schmidt. Okay, thank you. Sam Yothers.
I'm Sam Yothers, and I'm from Hilltown, and I'm currently a freshman at Pennridge. Rams football and Papa Yoder Field really give Pennridge a chance to live out their own Friday night lights. The field is rich with history and tradition, as Dr. Radigan said, and it goes back to before Pennridge even existed. There are two things in Percy and Sellersville that can very simply encompass the tradition and history that we have, which are Papa Yoder Field and South Middle School. There is something really special about this charming, handsome field and school. And now you, the Pennridge School Board, has the opportunity to keep this nostalgic field alive. Poppy, as it has been affectionately dubbed by most, was named after Lloyd Poppy Yoder, a teacher, coach, but more importantly, a humanitarian of the Pennridge community. He was one of the greatest teachers and individuals that I ever met, and he stood for a lot of great things, said former football coach Frank Konstaniak. Mr. Yoder was a man who believed firmly in traditions like the Thanksgiving Day game against Quakertown. Did you know that Pennridge/Selkirk has actually won 53 out of 84 games and tied 5? We tend to have a winning streak when we're at Poppy. It's a part of you, and it's really a part of the community, and it's when you come here. I came here in 6th grade. I didn't grow up here when I was younger. I grew up here, and I came to the school in 6th grade. and I didn't really fit in. And when I found football and I found being around that atmosphere, it really helped me to fit in. And it's just been my dream to manage a team that plays on that field. And Poppy, to me, makes the most sense, and here's why. If Poppy were to be turfed, then South Middle School could use it whenever they wanted. And it also opens up money for rentals. Other places could rent the field to use. And you could make it so that other sports could use it. I'm also a softball player, and speaking from that point of view, I know that gate money made at football games doesn't go to the football team, it actually goes to the school and the athletic program in general. So if the revenue were to suffer, which I think it will if we move up here, I think that would also hurt my team as well. As far as the busing that was mentioned, softball is actually bused for every single practice they need to have on their field. So busing is not really something that, I don't know if we could really put that in there. And about the field being so close, there was the Thanksgiving Day game. Mike Class had a touchdown. He ran into a little kid on the sideline, and that kid came up. I actually knew him. And he came up to me at the end and said, "Mike Class gave me a hug." And it made his life, just how excited he was. The fact that he'd been that close to Mike that's his role model. That's who he wants to be. I have a quote from Mark Hellman. Mark Hellman said, "I've been debating with myself for some time as whether or not I should address this, as I know my father's ego would not permit him to do so. What finally compelled me to act is the discovery that the school district's own communications refer to the alternative to Yoder Field as the turf behind the high school. Well, the turf behind the high school is more properly known as Hellman Field. With that being said, I support the upgrading of Poppy Yoder Field. Selkirk and later Pennridge have been playing football on that site for nearly 100 years. That kind of tradition is irreplaceable. Plus, the in-town location is becoming increasingly rare. As a player, that setting made me feel as though I was playing for the people of my community, as well as my school. I think that feeling will be lost in the move to an on-site campus, and that's coming from Hellman's son. And my last thing that I would say is if you do make the move to Hellman, Poppy deserves a huge send-off. We can't just write him off with, I don't even think one game a year is enough for him. We need to have a huge send-off so the legacy of that amazing man will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. I presume you are Jennifer Yothers. I kind of guessed that.
My name is Jennifer Yothers, and I'm a resident of Hilltown Township. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the presentation. It kind of hurts right here. And the reason that is because it's the legacy of multiple generations of family that have been in Pennridge, actually knew him, had him as a teacher. When our kids hear their grandparents talk, there's connection, there's understanding, there's foundation. And that's one of the reasons that we stayed in this district. That's a wonderful quality to have. The other thing, and I've said this before, is I'm very surprised that the board would make a decision based on numbers that are not substantiated. And an example for that is I actually talked with a bleacher installer who actually worked on Poppy Yoder Field in the past. The number that was given for the repairs is 3 times the amount that he would quote. And that's just one of the examples. I think that if the board is serious about the kind of money that you're looking to spend, that you really need to have hardcore numbers based on a site plan that you can actually talk intelligently about how much money that really is, because that makes a difference. One of the other things is being part of the past, or remembering the past, honoring the past, is part of the foundation on which we stand, whether we're talking about a community or we're talking about a nation. And I don't understand why we have to compromise embracing looking forward with honoring the past. One game a year is not honoring the past. That's a token that was thrown. One of the things that I think that can be done is why can't Pennridge, for a change, be proactive rather than reactive. We've seen that at Central Middle School. We've seen that with the Hellman track and field. Let's do things in a sense the right way and have two fields. We have growing sports. There's a lot of other sports that are going to be affected just by the scheduling alone if everything's up at Hellman. And also two revenue streams, which I think when we're talking about a deficit, that would be something that would be very important to consider. If you put everybody up there, you're going to decrease your revenue stream. Those are just items to consider. We're talking about real dollars and cents that I pay for, as well as everybody else. And the other thing is, keep our field in the midst of the community. It is right in the heart of Sellersville and Percy, and we would like to stay there. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Rush.
Good evening, Lee Rush from the great borough of Percy. I say that somewhat in jest, but it is a great borough. I have a history book in my library that was edited by Ivan Jur, and it has a lot of photographs in of a time when I obviously was not here, but back from the late 1800s and early 1900s. And I was thinking a lot this past month about many times when things have changed in our community and history goes a different direction. Obviously, this is one of those nights that our story and our narrative will change, because I don't think there's much doubt about what direction this is heading in. And there's been so many wonderful sentiments shared tonight. People who speak from their heart and have a lot of emotion and sentiment and historical perspective. It's what makes it so special here. It's why I stayed here, probably. Why I decided to raise my family here. Why I'm very proud to say that I graduated from Pennridge High School. Being a member of the class of '72 gives me a different perspective too for this evening, having been part of the class that offered up that as a gift to the district. And to think that for 42 years that people came to our field here and learned about Papa Yoder, who might otherwise never really have known who he was, I think it was a pretty good gift we gave. And it sounds like it's going to continue in a new way, maybe. One thing that makes it a little easier, my friend is sitting beside me, Mark Hellman. I was trying to get him to speak tonight, but he obviously didn't have to speak, or someone spoke for him. But Mark and I graduated together, and we played on the same football team for his dad, and Jeff Hollenbach was also on the team a little bit ahead of me. But we share a story that is rather unique, having known at least Coach Hellman Pud. And I think that's what makes it a little easier for me personally, is to know that his name and his legacy gets a new life, in a way. And if there's another thing that makes it a little easier for me, is to know that Coach Hollenbach is going to be coaching for at least, hopefully, I don't know how long, I hope a long time. But that makes it easier to know what kind of man he is and how he'll share with his players about what this means and how to move on. So I guess what I want to end with is just the thought about this idea of coming together as a community, having vision, and never being forced to these kind of decisions again on such importance in such a short timeline because of some issue with maintenance on lights or stands that we knew was happening for years. So when the lights, thank you, when the lights had to be taken down and the stands went past muster, it created more of a immediacy for this decision. So I really think that there's no accidents in life, and I really like that we had a presentation about strategic planning, comprehensive planning, coming together as a community. So maybe this can be a reminder of why having summits or something like that in the future, having a lot of dialogue with where we're going as a community can be really helpful for such big decisions that are going to require millions of dollars of decisions in the future. I just want to end by thanking Dr. Radigan in such a short tenure here to put in the time you did with that presentation, even if I disagree with parts of it. It's really insignificant at some level, but what I think about it. I think what's more important is that we have a superintendent that really put her own heart and soul into some of these decisions. Not easy to come into a position like that with a big decision like this in front of you. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the board who sits up here and makes these decisions, because I know, having talked to some of you, it's not easy. And there might be some logical, rational reasons for it, but I know you all have a lot of feelings about it too. I appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Keating.
Yes, my name is Gary Keating, a lifelong resident of Pennridge area, Sellersville. And it is clear to me, public comments that I've been listened to over the last 4 or 5 meetings as elected officials elected by us. It seems like a clear decision. As per your own website, as a resident of the Pennridge School District, you have control over your public schools, us the taxpayers. Do we or don't we? And despite the unfortunate comments several weeks ago about the, quote, inconvenience of playing football at Papa Yoder to the students and the staff, who I believe is paid, the young lady that spoke earlier conducted the poll. Clearly the students wish to keep Papa Yoder in play and have their Friday night lights. It is apparently not an inconvenience for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes the list. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before? Yes, please.
Good evening. Some of you know me, many of you do not. I'm Jeff Hollenbach's dad. To add anything more about Papa Yoder would almost be ludicrous, because Dr. Yoder, who spoke previously, I have to tell you, may I tell you a quick story about Dr. Yoder? He got his doctorate degree, and he walked into the house after he just got his degree, and he has 2 little daughters. And the one girl looked at the other one and said, well, what kind of a degree does he have? And the other one said, well, it's a kind of degree you can't do anything with. So that's Dr. Yoder back there. He's going to get me afterwards. I want to thank you people for all the time that you give. And I know that not all is reciprocal in the sense that you will find people shaking your hands, etc. But I do want to thank you. I am disturbed, however, about one thing, and that is these bleachers over on Papa Yoder Field right now. Now, I'm not arguing the point that they are probably dangerous at this point, but I find it difficult that they cannot be repaired. I find it difficult that you have to spend $1 million to put in, or more, I don't know how much more, to put in a new set of bleachers and not even give a shot at repairing these bleachers. I've been going over there since since the bleachers have been there, since 1950 or whatever it was, 57 that those bleachers were put in. I have never seen an accident yet, except one time a little boy who I happen to know fell through the back of the bleachers. But that was a long time ago, and that situation has long since been repaired. I just do not understand why you can't give or take $1 million, fix up those bleachers, put in new lights, and bingo, that's it. Forget all of that. Forget our football team on the field at Poppy Yoder Field. Now, you say, well, he's prejudiced because my son happens to be the coach. Yes, I am. But I'm also prejudiced because of these great kids that I've gotten to know that play for him. I think they're just great kids. They have always been great kids in all the years I've been coaching since 1952. And I want to tell you, I think it's a crying shame if you take Poppy Yoder Field away from us. Thank you.
Hi, Claire Steinberg, East Rockville Township. I just have questions about pricing. To repair the bleachers, did we get a quote on how much it would cost to repair them? I know you decided not to, but I'm just curious. How old are those bleachers? And can we see a report of what's wrong with those bleachers? And do we have a plan? I know it wasn't brought up tonight, my curiosity, of if we want to put permanent bleachers up here in the turf, what the schematics would be? Do we have any of that information? That's basically my questions.
At the end, we will try to answer your questions. If there's
Jeff Almach, wonderful town of Ferguson, taxpayer. I really respect what's been said tonight about the history of this area. I think it's been wonderful. I also really respect what you do. And I think I've learned that, I have not spent personally that much time at school board meetings, and to understand, get a little bit of insight at the really difficult decisions, the choices that you have to make. I really respect that. I want to talk about two things quickly. One is frustration management. So I have a group of boys over here right now that are frustrated. Now I'm going to talk to them about how sometimes in life things don't go the way you want them to go. And I believe it's a learning experience here in this great school district. We'll learn together. We talk about family a lot. We're family. They don't like this decision. I know that. And we will talk about that together. We'll grow together as a team. And I also want to reference, secondly, this word, inconvenience. And I know why the word was said. Believe me, I know they can be an inconvenience. Sometimes I have to pick up their helmets after practice. Of course, they run for that, but they can be an inconvenience. I get that. So sometimes their actions can be an inconvenience, but this team is not an inconvenience. This team works hard to represent you and to represent us with pride and dignity and class and respect. That's who we are. And not only Pennridge football, but I'm proud when I go to a Pennridge basketball game, or I watch this play, or I go to see a Pennridge baseball game. I think the activities that we have in this district are outstanding. And any reference of this team being an inconvenience was an injustice, and it was wrong. We will play with pride and respect wherever we play, and we'll represent you well. I am totally proud to be their coach, and I really respect these guys. I invite you to come in the locker room, the weight room, anytime you want, just to get a feel. One of you knows them very well, but just to get a feel for who these young men are. They're wonderful guys, and they will represent us well wherever we play, and we'll learn together. Thank you very much.
going to solve the problem for everybody. So, just a little joke to lighten the mood. I'm a little surprised. I think what we have, and I appreciate Dr. Radigan's suggestion. I think what we're going to get out of that suggestion, however, is something where we have this giant field, which will be akin to the vet, which we all know nobody liked, right? It's a multi-use stadium, nobody liked it. We're going to, sorry. We're going to get this big stadium, and nobody's going to be happy. I have a suggestion. There are PhDs here. I'm going to talk slowly. Yeah, sorry. I'm going to throw some numbers. Ready? $3 million is going to cost to make this new stadium appear. I believe $3.2 million, something like that. $2 million of Pop Yoder Field will buy you turf. It will buy you bleachers, and it will, through fundraising, we will get you $400,000 for the lights. That's not a bribe. It's insulting that's been suggested that that's a bribe by a few people on board and otherwise. Another $1 million will be left over. We have $1 million to put into Hellman Field, which would include field houses. It would include bathrooms and snack stands, I believe. I'm not totally sure of all those numbers. One thing I want to get across, we do not need bleachers at Hellman Field. We have 600 seats. We do not need it. I'll use the rest of my 3 minutes to say that we don't need more bleachers at Hellman Field. If the football team plays at Pop Yoder Field, we do not need extra seating. We can do all the other things. It's all good. We can eat all that stuff. We do not need more bleachers at Hellman City. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Liam Kerr. I live in Sellersville. I'm the corresponding secretary of the Pennridge High School Student Council. I'm here tonight to represent the minority opinion of many students, a sizable minority in Pennridge High School, who believes that the idea the administration has provided for us, the compromise, is a very good compromise between the two sides. There would be still one football game at Pop Yoder Field every year. May I recommend that that football game be the homecoming game, which is a great tradition every year run by the student council. I believe that moving it to Hellman Field would be an economically sound decision. And just to wrap it up, there is a very large group of students, despite what's been said tonight, that supports this administration's proposal. It's not a unanimous decision on the students' part to back the keeping it at Pop Yoder, largely because of financial difficulties our district's going through. And just one final time, I would like to say to recommend to the administration's proposal that the one game that we have at Pop Yoder would be for the homecoming game. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Lee, Sellersville. You know, it's easy to spend other people's money. But when you have to spend your own money, it's a different story. Most of these people here come here to honor a man. So I ask you, is that what you're doing? Are you honoring a man? Or are you pacifying the situation? I know that you think that our economy is strong and coming back, but it's not. And I think you're going to find out that if our economy does collapse, we're going to have serious problems. And we can't afford the finance of doing this kind of thing now. Now you say, well, it's not collapsing, everything's good. That's what the Wizards of Smart have said. The Wizards of Smart said quantitative easing was a good thing, the printing of money out of thin air. But now those same Wizards of Smart are saying, maybe it wasn't such a good idea. Because when you start throwing money at the markets, it's like a drug, and they can't get rid of it. They can't get it off. So now we have a problem. Our economy could very well collapse.
In 2008, Putin went to China and he tried to make a deal with the Chinese. Hey, let's collapse the economy. You said, well, it can't happen. It can happen through our markets. We are now in worse shape than we ever were in, financially, as a country. And for you to spend money needlessly at this time is foolhardy. And you should think carefully about what you're doing. You are voted in. You are voted in by the people to do their will, what they want you to do. This is not about you. You didn't get there because you were brilliant. You got there because you were voted in by the people. And the people have said, no, don't do it. I think you should honor their wishes. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Evan Kerr, and I'm from Sellersville also. I'm Liam's brother. I don't think you'll find it surprising that I agree with Liam's opinion. Before this evening, like past couple weeks, if you asked me, I would have said I'm in support of the retaining the fields at Pop Yoder. But with all due respect to the Pop Yoder family and his legacy, I would like to agree with the administration's proposal and once again say that there are a lot of students that feel that way too. And like Coach Hollenbach said, the team will play wherever they go, and they'll maintain their sportsmanship and represent the district well. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see two more people standing. I'll take those, then we're going to move on to the rest of the meeting. There will be public comment at the end as well. Yes?
Yes, my name is Megan Banis-Clemens from West Rock Hill. First, I want to thank Dr. Radigan because you really put a lot of effort into that and trying to make everybody happy. And I think that you did a really good job with the options that the board left you. However, I don't think the board put enough effort into determining how much it would really cost to fix the bleachers at South, at Pop Yoder Field. It was commented last meeting, there were a lot less people a couple weeks ago at that meeting, but Mrs. Miller had commented that they did not find structural issues with those bleachers. And maybe that can be commented on when you guys respond to everybody's questions. But the bleachers are made of steel and aluminum. You know, if they don't wear, they don't rot. There's no reason why we can't find a solution to fix those bleachers. What I'm hearing is those bleachers, if we fix them, would only last 10 years, but if we buy brand new ones, they'll last 30 years. So is our intention to buy brand new bleachers every 30 years? Because the bleachers we currently have already lasted more than the 30 years that you would predict the new bleachers to last for. If you add up the amount of money we are currently spending on salaries, benefits, pensions, we all know there's a pension crisis right now with how much we have to spend on that, and then you include the debt, which we're now raising because we're borrowing another $10 million, and we're also going to be borrowing $14 million under the name of the VOTAC to fix the VOTAC. We can't afford, when you put those numbers together, we don't even have any more money to spend on anything else. And right now, if all we're spending money on is to pay our teachers and to pay our debt, we just keep accumulating debt. We would probably have money to have two fields if we didn't have to pay 10% of our budget every year on debt from years before. And all we want to do is keep borrowing money, and we're paying more interest on that. And I just think that the whole community, whether it be the taxpayers or everyone who's in favor of keeping the field at Pop Yoder Field, would be happy if we could find a solution for fixing the bleachers that are already there. And also, we had asked last meeting about whether or not an engineer had looked at them, and the response was, well, we already eliminated that option, and we're not going to pay an engineer to come out and evaluate what needs to be done because it would be too expensive. So we're not going to actually get all the information because we've already decided that we're not going to go with that decision. I feel like that's not what everybody here wants. Thank you.
Good evening. Bill Krause from East Rock Hill. And first off, thank you for what you do for the community and the school district. One of the things I have not heard here tonight is if anybody has done the research on the increased injuries that are going to happen up at that turf field, from concussions to torn up knees. Professional teams are going back to natural grass fields for a reason. You should look into that. Thank you.
Mr. Haley, please wait until the final public comment at this point. You've already had a chance to speak.
Presentation, because the shortfall of it was that there are no dollar figures attached to the presentation, which obviously would bear on whether this is a good proposal or not. There was a question raised by another lady here about the cost of fixing the bleachers, and the board sticks to this estimate of $945,000. I got a bid of $300,000. The lady that was up here before had a bid of $298,000. And they're made of aluminum and they're galvanized steel understructure, and they last much, much more. These bleachers have been there for 57 years, well beyond a 30-year guaranteed by a company. And because of their galvanized and aluminum, they will last more than the 10 years that's being cited. I had to put in a request with the Pennsylvania Open Records Department to get to look at the estimate of $945,000, and I had to also put in a request to see the insurance company's assessment of the condition of the bleachers. Those are still pending now. I've given the information to Mr. Santasiero, who's going to look into whether you want to now release it or wait until Open Records Department requires you to release these records. We're basing these decisions on numbers that have no validity, that have no reality to them. We have two estimates here for around $300,000 to fix the bleachers. In times like this, when we can't afford to pay all of these things, we have to go with the real figures. You're basing your decisions on figures that aren't real, and I just don't see why you can't fix the bleachers for $300,000 and put up the lights and call it a day.
I told you we were closing the comments. I really would like to do that, so make your comments very short, please, because we need to respond to the questions and move on with the meeting.
All right, well, thank you for the time, and I appreciate your service. I want to use a football expression for you that I recommend you guys punt. When I first heard about the Papa Yoder renovations and the discussion, it was last February. So you guys are planning, in essence, in 2 months, a 40-year or longer period. I know that you want to represent the taxpayers of Pennridge School District, and there are a lot of taxpayers here. I would recommend that you table the motion today, discuss a referendum that will go on the ballot in November, and also hopefully that you give time to those who want to improve Papa Yoder Field, time to fundraise to do so. Next year, as far as I'm aware, there are 4 home games at Papa Yoder. From what I'm understanding, the bleachers do not need to be demolished and repaired immediately. So to push this decision off for 1 year seems a doable scenario to me. And that way you, in good conscience, if you did get this to a referendum, would be clearly understanding what this community wants to do with their fields and facilities. Thank you.
Please give us your name and municipality.
Sure, my name is David Hine, and I live in Bedminster Township.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Hollenbach, Perksey resident, son of Jeffrey Charles Hollenbach. I wanted to say three things to address Dr. Radigan's point in the presentation. She said that from 1930 until now, it seems to be a tradition. That's false. It is a tradition. I was a South Middle School student as well, and I was at the meeting a couple weeks ago. And again, to my father's point, injustice, that was just wrong. That was just totally wrong. And my third point, please stand up if you are a Pennridge High School former student, or you have played Pennridge football, or if you played football, or if you have any understanding of what these kids go through day in and day out, practicing, playing, and the pride that goes along with that. Please rise. I challenge you.
You are not allowed to pull the board, first of all. That's policy 903. So you can ask the question, and board members may answer it, but you cannot pull the board.
That's fine.
Per policy.
No problem there.
So.
My son played football here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My son's seated in the 4th row.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay. Have any of you played or went to Pennridge?
I was born at Grandview Hospital. I went to Catholic school though.
Okay.
And my kids went to Pennridge.
Okay. But none of you have went to Pennridge High School.
Are you?
Yeah.
Remarks finished?
Thank you very much.
At this point, I will ask Dr. Radigan to respond to the questions that she can.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Yarnell. I will answer the ones that I'm aware of, and then I'm going to ask a few of the other administrators to assist on some others. One of the questions was, did we actually get a cost for the repair of the bleachers at Papa Yoder? And, you know, we're not here to argue with the price that we received, but the estimate was close to $1 million. The next question was, what is the cost of the proposal presented tonight? Proposal presented tonight would come in at around $1.7 million. The Papa Yoder full renewal of the field would be about $3.6 million, and the helmet track and field would be about $2.5 million. Please keep in mind that the proposal tonight allows the use of both fields, and it would be less than the other two numbers that you just heard. Someone asked, could we move the bleachers from Papa Yoder to the high school while we refurbish Papa Yoder? The answer is certainly we could do that, but that is not the recommendation. Another question I'm going to turn to you, Mrs. Johnson, had to do with the life expectancy of the turf field. Someone wanted to know if we factor that in when we think about cost.
Not as part of this presentation, but definitely as part of our 5-year plan. Currently, the 5-year plan does not go out to the year at which we would start to reinvest in refurbishing that field. So in the next probably 2-3 years, as we expand our 5-year plan, that will be part of the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Mr. Babb, if you'll come up to the microphone, I have a question for you. It has to do with the safety of students playing on a turf field. Could you address that, please?
Sure. Artificial surface, artificial turf is safe. It's used throughout the NFL. Every NFL team has a indoor practice facility that they use. Quite a few teams, the Super Bowl, played on that artificial turf. We actually have field turf, which was put down by the New England Patriots after they found out that Tom Brady performed better on artificial surface. They put it down at mid-season, and They've had it down for 8 years. They're actually getting new artificial surface, field turf. They just put it in this past year. 8 years is the warranty. We're seeing it last 10, 12. In our area, everybody's got it. If you look around, pretty much every school has it. Worcester Hicken, to my knowledge, is the first school that is actually replacing it. They were one of the first schools that had it. I'd say around 2000 is when they first got it.
Thank you, Mr. Babb. In case you don't know, Mr. Babb is our athletic director. Mr. Loeffler, I have a few questions I heard for you, and Mr. Loeffler is our director. One of the questions I heard was, how old are the bleachers at Papa Yoder?
We don't really know. They go back to 68. I have records of 72. I've also been told that they've been there since 72, but moved in 91 with the addition. In other words, the home bleachers were on the visitor side, and during 91, they were still wood, so they moved them over to the home side. So there's some confusion about how old they are, but I think they go back to early 70s, at least the structure. Maybe not the aluminum that's on them, but the steel structure that's underneath goes back to the 70s.
I know you've represented this at other meetings, but could you just give a quick summary of what's wrong with the bleachers?
Tripping hazards, probably the biggest things that I can think of is the step heights all the way through all of the ways to get up the bleachers. There's like 2 steps and then 11-inch drop, 2 steps, 11-inch drop. There should be a railing with that. The steps themselves are uneven going up to the bleachers. There should be a cement pad underneath them. Probably one of the bigger items is the flute on the aluminum itself that is slip resistant as we're going all the way down. Then we get into some of the structure where they said that there is some repairs needed immediately, and that we should get a structural engineer in to look at the steel structures underneath the home side, and then what's holding it up, the cement columns in the ground should be looked at by a structural engineer. The press box, when you go to the press box, the floor itself needs to be replaced, among other things. The other thing is a very large step to get up to the press box. When you do, you're pulling the door out with that large step. You slip, you fall, you're going all the way down. That door should be placed on either side, which there's not access to that. All the fencing all the way around needs to be tightened up. All these 4-inch gaps, anything over 4-inch gaps that is really everywhere should be closed up. Again, a lot of ADA issues, not enough seating. Even the 2 that we do have, you can't really, would not pass code today.
And the last question I heard was, is there a plan for the bleachers at the high school?
The plan for the bleachers, the portable at the high school?
I think it was, the question was, if we were to build brand new ones, do we have a plan, do we have a site drawing or anything like that?
Oh, we do, yes. For the high school bleachers, if you're going to go ahead, we have a site drawing for that, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radigan. At this point, we'll move to actually proposing a motion regarding the fields. I'm going to move that we authorize the administration to move forward with the Hellman track and field and Papa Yoder field recommendations as presented. And as such, this motion gives the administration the authority to proceed with the design and bidding phase at the Hellman track and field. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Comments or questions from board members?
I do. Actually, the word insult was thrown around to me, but that's exactly the word that I felt when I read that recommendation. I thought it was an insult to the community's traditions, and the community's history.
Yes, what I heard from this is that we are looking for
part of our ongoing heritage. The Papa Yoder Field will continue to be a part of our community, as will the Hellman Field community. I didn't hear specifically any timetable on how we're going to spend this money, and it allows it to be phased in. What I see about this plan, it allows for the opportunity for community for fundraising, which I believe is really important. As it has been mentioned, that we have serious budgetary issues, mostly around our social costs, our PESR's responsibility, as well as our health insurance costs, and other just general increasing costs. So what we're seeing here is a program that is trying to be, I believe, sensitive to the current budgetary issues that we have, and will allow an overall solution in time to this, and will allow the community a voice in seeing which way this goes directly. And the voice that you would have would be your willingness to help us with fundraising and to try to help our struggling taxpayers, because that angst is real. This is not, we all feel your passion, and we share your concerns. I said my oldest son played for Pennridge back in the 90s. And I respect that tradition, and I respect certainly Papa Yoder as an individual, and no one here wants to in any way diminish the respect that we have for him as a leader, as a humanitarian, and as part of our Pennridge heritage. I believe this is a compromise proposal that will attempt to allow the two fields to be developed, and that for our community to help us decide how how they will be used in the future.
Mr. Devon.
Thank you. I think that what was presented tonight is a reasonable approach as a starter. My major concern with Papa Yoder has to do with engineering reports prepared by Dewey over the last several years. I've read them all. I would suggest that anybody who's interested pick up the doggone things and read them, especially relative to Papa Yoder. My major concern with Papa Yoder is let's find a way to use the thing in honor of him, as Dr. Radigan talked about. But I am very concerned about the fact that this thing is totally non-ADA compliant, and that's an issue. And it's a federal issue as opposed to a state issue.
You.
Yes.
Mr. Castro.
Thank you. I think Dave said it really well. You spent a lot of time on this. Everybody sitting up here, I believe, feels it's a very difficult situation. Whether or not you're from here or not being from here and making the decision is very difficult for me. I wouldn't want someone coming to my hometown that wasn't there. I understand Mr. Hollenbach's comments, but I think it actually makes it more difficult to make a decision, for me anyway. I think Dr. Radigan did a great job at coming to a compromise for all of us. This is not about Papa Yoder. Why would we ever want to not honor that man? So we're talking about safety and continuing traditions and continuing to honor him and remember him like that. So I think we've accomplished Dr. Radigan's plan is allowing us to do all those things. So I know we put a lot of time in. I think all the board members have put their heart and soul in it, and I just want to share that with you. This was not a foregone conclusion, and it's taken a lot of effort, and we're going to find out where we're at with it, I think, pretty soon. So thanks for coming out again. I really appreciate that. I wish you guys would come out for some of our other issues too, because that would help us make the right decision for everyone. Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment? This is Yoder.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I guess just to start off saying, actually, this is actually been thinking about this for years. Really, I've been on the board for 5 years, almost 5 years, with a break in between. So since 2007, And I mean, this issue's been going on for a long time and been discussed. This is not just in the past 2 months. And so I think that's something that people need to realize, that it's a long-term issue. And, you know, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is what traditions we're trying to preserve and what are we trying to accomplish, because in meetings, you know, a couple years ago when it was a very wet year, I mean, there were a lot of football players and parents coming out saying, we don't want to play on Papa Yoder, we want to play at Hellman Field. Last year, we had a community summit, and everybody in that discussion was talking about Hellman Field. I think in 2008, we voted to put to turf the field, and then it was later dedicated to Mr. Hellman, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I want to make some comments about that. But at that time, you know, it was talked about, it was put, you know, the idea was we can't do this now, but the idea was, you know, there were plans drawn for putting a stadium there. So, you know, looking forward, I think our job as board members is to, you know, we have to look at all of the issues and consider everything and everybody's point of view. A lot of people who come up and speak, they're speaking from their heart, they're talking about their, you know, what they love the most, what they care about, and that's all very important. And what we have to do is take all that in and consider all the points of view, and we're not just looking at the past, we have to look at the future. And I said a couple weeks ago, you know, I want to do it right. I am making a decision for 30 to 40 years. It sounds like the bleachers that were there were in for about 40 years. And you know, there are a lot of issues with those bleachers, and not just the bleachers, but if you look at the bathrooms, and if we put in new bleachers and then we don't have a place for that we don't have bathrooms that are handicap accessible, I have a real problem with that. You know, and then people talk about what is it about that field that we're trying to save? Are we, you know, people talked about the closeness of the field. Okay, and you know, and I read all the letters that were given to us, and I listened to, you know, the first meeting we came to, people talked about the closeness of the field. Well, now it's, you know, now the argument has become, well, let's make it a multi-purpose, a multi-use field, but that means the bleachers are going to be farther back. Well, now we lose the closeness. We've heard people say, well, no, we don't need to fix the field, but now people are saying, well, let's turf it, and then we'll have 2 turf fields. You know, so what is it about the field? Is it the closeness of the field? Is it the grass, or is it just the location? And, you know, so there are all those things, and the argument about why we want to save that field, you know, has changed. And, you know, now it's also about Papa Yoder the man, and to me, the man is not the field. And I think that if we put if we put the state, you know, if we move we put bleachers up here, I don't think that we're, you know, we intend in any way to forget or diminish his legacy. And, you know, I wish I had known him. He sounds like a wonderful, wonderful man, and he sounds like, you know, I've read about him. I read the things on Facebook. I read some of his bios. I loved what Dale Yoder said. I also want to point out, you know, Lee Rush mentioned Wayne Hellman and bringing his legacy to light. Nobody actually has ever talked about him, and I just want to point out that in 2011, the Education Foundation honored him with the Friend of Education Award. So I'm just going to read a short, I'll just read like a part of it, because nobody's talked about him at all. So it said he was hired in 1955 as a physical education teacher and coach. G. Wayne Pud Hellman's name became synonymous with Pennridge athletics. He coached football for 26 years, track and field for 33 years, winter track for 20 years, and the summer swim team for 3 years. After stepping down as football coach after the 1982 season, Mr. Hellman served as the high school's athletics director until his retirement in 1991. He went on to coach 1 season of football at Pennridge Central Junior High and 1 season of girls cross country at the high school. The new turf field at the high school was rededicated in his honor in 2008. He passed away in October 2010 at the age of 84. And one of his students said, as athletes, we knew we were expected to do our best, to be gracious in defeat and humble in victory. We were expected to be gentlemen and ladies at all times, as well as the best students we could be. Coach Hellman was the embodiment of these qualities. I want to say something also about the finances. There's been a lot of comments from the public about the estimates that we've gotten. You know, as long as I've been on the board, every project we do is based on an estimate. They're all based on estimates, and we use we ask experts to look at it, and we get an estimate. And we've been using Dewey Engineering, I think, for about 10 years, and the projects coming under budget. I think when we get to the facilities, you're going to see the projects that we're doing this summer are coming in about over $100,000 or $200,000 under budget. You know, it's like, you know, we have the experts that we use. People say they went out and they talked to somebody and got estimates. And as a board, you know, it's our, you know, we're responsible for making a decision. We have to rely on the experts that the district hires. And if we find that they're not doing a good job, then we would find somebody else. But in my experience, Dewey has done a good job, and the people we've used, Mr. Loeffler has done a good job. That's how we make decisions. It costs money to go out and get bids. And the other thing is it's not just about the money. There are a lot of other factors that go into the decision. I think Dr. Radigan's proposal is a good one. I think it addresses a lot of issue. It takes a lot of different points of view in, keeping the cost down. I'm all for the fundraising aspect. I actually thought that when we put the turf field in and we, you know, it wasn't possible to put bleachers there at the time. And I've thought since that point, I think, you know, it would be great for people to come together, the community to raise funds for part of the project to show that they're invested in it. It is the education of our students, and I believe sports is a valuable component of that education, that it benefits the whole community. And there are lots of studies done on the benefits of sports, keeping kids in school, what they learn. You know, even, I mean, Nelson Mandela used sports to unify his country, and we could talk a lot about the value of sports. And I think putting the bleachers up here and having a stadium up here has many, many benefits, and I think having the game at Papa Yoder, you know, keeps that tradition alive, and it can become a very special event each year, and yeah, that's what I guess that's what all my comments about that. I do have one question as far as the motion goes. It talks about the design and the bidding, that we're going to be voting on that, so I'm wondering if we will see the specs before it goes out to bid, if the board will see that.
So you will bring us the specs, and obviously, once the bids are given, the board always has the right to reject them. That's been done before. If they come in high, or they are such that we do not find that acceptable, that makes it more problematic for the fall season, clearly, but it is something that you always have to face when you go out to bid, whether they come in high or low. I would note that the Central Bucks East stadium bids did come in significantly below their estimate, so maybe that's hope for this situation as well.
So tonight we're voting, I mean, it says we're going to be voting on the design and the bidding.
Authorized design and bidding.
Right, but so when would we see this? The specs or talk about what is going out to bid?
Well, we're giving us the okay tonight. We have to develop them. The bleachers are pretty well developed already because we had talk about that. So we may, you know, go out if you want to see the bleachers, we can show you that. And we could take from a 3,000 alternate bid, 4,000 alternate bid, 5,000. That way we come back with 3 different pricing. And now that we give the okay to design, we'll go back and start designing it. We'll have many discussions, bring it to the board, facilities meeting once or twice, and then out the bid when everybody's ready for the rest of the part of the stadium, the bathrooms, the locker rooms, concession stands, things like that.
So you're saying that it would go out to bid right away, just for the bleachers right away?
The bleachers we want to try to get up by the first game or second game of September, yes.
So we
And
need
so
to-
we wouldn't see any specs for that,
Well, we
it
can
would
show
just be
you,
the
we
3,
can show
4,
you,
5,000.
we can show you the prints, yes. We can put together prints real quick and show it to you.
But then we'd have discussion about the other.
The other will be a lot more discussion about, yes.
Any other comments? I would say that I agree with Mrs. Yardley in the sense that in the fall of 2011, I remember having the boardroom full of students, parents, and even the coach at the time of the football team, not Mr. Hollenbach, but his predecessor, and they were quite adamant about moving it because of the quagmire conditions at Papa Yoder. My personal opinion is I would not authorize money to be spent at Yoder unless we do change the drainage there, because I think the drainage is terrible. I have actually attended graduation there, because I've gone to graduations specifically for the last 20-some years, and there have been times when you got muddy in June at graduation. So personally, I think, despite the fact that I didn't support it at the time, Mr. Creedon was an advocate for going to Stabler. I think that has been a wise move and has certainly saved a lot of people from getting very wet at various graduations or having indoor graduations, which indoors at the high school, which limited the attendance by parents. I also think the field presentation that Dr. Radigan offered was a good one in the sense that at Hellman, we already have 5 of our varsity teams play there routinely. We have men's and women's soccer, men's and women's lacrosse, and the field hockey team that the women field at the high school. And those, I think, have all been successful. Certainly, if parking means anything, they have good attendance when they have a game here, and I can't imagine that we won't have good attendance if we have a football game here or when we have football games here. I think the bleachers will benefit those teams, not to mention any of the facilities that will be built as part of this will also benefit those teams. And so I think in that sense it's a larger good, if you will, from my perspective, and that's very important. So I obviously will plan to support this motion. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to...
Yeah,
Mr. Sarnes.
I'll just add to that I will support it also. As you said, I've been on the board now 10 years, and I think that every 2 years or so we discuss fields in some manner or another. And that's why I would not be in favor of a minimal repair to Papa Yoder, just because we'd be back here 2 years from now, as soon as the rain comes and everything else. So I think this is a good compromise. And my son played soccer at Papa Yoder before we had Hellman, and I heard horror stories from him about the field. So without a field repair, I just would not be in favor of any kind of money put into Papa Yoder. So I will support this.
Anyone else? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 8-1. Thank you. At this point, we'll go on to the committee reports. First committee report is activities. Mrs. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. The Activities Committee met on March 12th. I have 3 motions to put forth. First motion, to approve the sister schooling program as a pilot program for the 2014-2015 school year. Continuation of the program will be contingent on future board approval and for pilot year, and addendum A is attached.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Miller and seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the sister schooling program as a pilot program in the coming school year. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mrs. Miller?
Second motion to recommend approval of the following overnight trip, Pennridge High School cheerleaders overnight trip to 2014 Pine Forest Summer Cheerleading Camp at Chestnut Lake, Entry 6 Trails, and Road, Beach Lake, PA, from Tuesday, August 19th, 2014 to Friday, August 22nd, 2014.
We have a second to the cheerleaders overnight trip. Moved by Mrs. Miller and seconded by Mr. Deming to approve this overnight trip. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Don't get it. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mrs. Miller.
Third motion to recommend approval of the revision to the 2013-14 Pennridge School District calendar as listed in A and B of the motion. Note any changes needed due to additional days off to result in new proposal being brought before the Pennridge School District Board of Directors.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Miller and seconded by Mr. Sarnes to approve the revised 2013-14 school calendar. Comments or questions from the board?
It was Steve who was saying.
I'm sorry. My apologies. Obviously, my hearing's going.
Oh, Mr. Sarnes is
Change
quite a
that
good
choice.
looking guy. I understand.
Any comments or questions for board members on this motion? I would simply say, as I always have to enter into the discussion on the calendar, that I believe this is a good compromise. Like many other things, it is a compromise. The school year that we have calls for 184 school days. I know people often ask, why do we go beyond the state minimum? Well, I would hope that we view education as important enough that we would be willing to add those 4 days. This year, obviously, it becomes difficult because the last day would fall on a Monday and the last full week in June, and so it probably is counterproductive to have that. So I'm going to support this, especially since I believe that the additional day that would be converted from an instructional day to a in-service day will support some of the activities that need to be done with the new teacher evaluation program that the state has proposed and passed, and all of our teachers have to have a plan in place to comply with that. And so these 3 days now, instead of 2, will be devoted to that activity for our teaching staff. So it won't be lost time, it will simply be time redirected. So currently the plan is to have the last day of school on Friday, the 20th of June. Anyone else? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0.
Next Activities Committee meeting will be scheduled as needed.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Academic performance. The comments tonight are brief. We have not had an academic performance committee meeting since the last board meeting. The next one is scheduled for April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2014 at 7:30 here or over there in the district administration office. I would note that the primary topic on that will be an update on the progress of the one-to-one program throughout this year. Next, the Facilities Committee. Mr. Casper.
Thank you. The Facilities Committee met on March 11th. There were 3 items on the agenda. We already worked on number 3. So first, number 1 is motion to approve the obsolete equipment, books, and supplies.
You have a second. Moved by Mr. Casper and seconded by Mr. Deming to approve the obsolete equipment, books, and supplies. Comments or questions from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Casper.
Okay. Number 2 is the motion to accept the bids as listed below for 2014 summer projects. The operations building, the Sellersville roof repairs and silo roof repairs, South Middle School capital improvements, West Rockville lighting upgrades, and the alarm replacement totaling $3,361,255.
We have a second to that motion. Second. Moved by Mr. Casper and seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the summer building projects. Comments or questions from board members?
I do. I would just like to touch on what Mrs. Jarley said before. This is another one of the projects that they got a lot of bids, a lot of good contractors. It went out in a timely fashion, and I believe it came in just over about $100,000 less than we anticipated. So just sort of piggyback on Mrs. Jarley's comments. $128,000. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Anyone else? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Casper.
The next facilities committee is scheduled to meet on April 8th at the district administration office.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Sarnes.
Yes, the Finance Committee met on February 25th, March 4th, and March 11th. And we have 3 motions. The first is a motion to approve the PESERS pension reform resolution.
Like a second to that. Moved by Mr. Sarnes and seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the PESERS pension reform resolution. I would note that this is something we are pleading, maybe is a better word, with the state legislature and the governor to make some move at meaningful pension reform for the school district as well as for the state, which pays half of this as well. Other comments or questions?
Yes.
Ms. Emmett.
I assume that this is going to pass, and if it does pass, I would recommend that we consider sending a copy of our resolution to all the other, I think it's 499 other districts, with a request that they contact their representatives with something similar, because I don't believe that this PESERS thing is going to be resolved in any manner unless 500 districts get a hold of their, it'd be helped if 500 districts get a hold of their senators and representatives.
Thank you. Dr. Radigan, can that be done by Pennridge, if indeed the resolution passes? Yes. Okay, then I think isn't that a rather expeditious way of doing this once we pass the resolution? That can be sent to all the districts, or all the other school districts. So
540 cents a copy, US mail. Okay.
All right, anyone else? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Next, Mr. Sarnes.
Yes, the next is a motion to approve the contracts A through G as listed in the agenda.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
Mrs. Miller actually came in
Okay,
first.
thank you.
Mr. Sarnes, the motion for Mr. Sarnes and the second for Mrs. Miller. Comments or questions from board members?
I have a question.
Yes, Mrs. Yarden.
We talked about I was wondering about the date for graduation, because I believe Dr. Brevard was putting in the request for the exemption from the state, or to have it done by hours, and I was wondering if that had been approved yet.
Well, I can answer that question because I talked to Dr. Creedon tonight just before the meeting, and I think he's run away. The answer to the question, as I understand it, is if the waiver is approved, and it has not been yet to the best of his knowledge, but probably we will know by the end of the month, graduation would be June 12th. If not, it will revert to the original scheduled date of June 18th. June 12th is a Thursday, June 18th is a Wednesday. The 18th would allow us to get the full 180 days for the seniors, the 12th would not. That's why we need to get a waiver from the state if we want to do the 12th. So the waiver has been applied for, we do not know the answer yet.
We do have a backup date at Stabler.
So those are the 2 dates, but the decision is not finalized yet.
The only comment I would like to add is that it's not counting the days going forward, it's also the event Stabler. Like with a lot of other school districts, that they would have to actually move it somewhere between 12th and 18th, but that's where the
Yes, basically, the situation at Stabler is many of the districts in the Lehigh Valley use it, and our compatriots to the north, Quakertown, use it. They were the next to the last in. We were the last in, as far as I know, unless someone else has joined that list, and so we obviously get the last choice among the districts that use that particular facility for graduation from high school.
I also had a question about the school relocation sites asked at the committee meeting, and then I was told to ask again tonight. Are these relocation sites enough for house all of our students if they all had to be evacuated? Each site, and is it for a specific pool, or is it just whatever is needed? So I was wondering about that.
Mrs. Kaleza, I believe you are the expert here, so could you answer that question or questions?
The sites are arranged with each building individually. They're not intended to house all of the students. If a particular school for some reason has to be evacuated, many of those sites are backup sites. For instance, Norths also can use the high school. They have a memorandum of understanding with First Baptist Church as another relocation site. West Rock Hill has one with Grandview, the outpatient center. So some of the schools we have don't need MOUs. For instance, the high school has arranged, if they had to, they would be going over to the community college. So they're not intended to house all of the students, just students from one particular building, if it's needed.
So there are other relocation sites, but those don't need MOUs, you're saying?
Many of them have as their relocation site Central Middle School. For instance, Siler and Grass will use Central Middle School if they need a relocation site. The Senior Center and the Firehouse in Sellersville are in the event that Central has to be relocated. So they would go there.
If you said the community college, there's not an MOU with the community?
No, not all of them have been worked out yet.
Oh, so there'll be more to come?
Most likely.
Okay.
The principals actually do that. And here at the high school, it's Scott Hagan that does the safety plan for the high school. But they're not intended to house every student, just individual schools if they have to be relocated.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions about this motion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Sarnes?
Yes, the final motion is to authorize the administration to advertise the 2014-2015 bids for items A through H in the agenda.
Have a second to that motion.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Sarnes and seconded by Mrs. Miller to advertise for bids. Comments or questions from board members? Giardi, you look like you're approaching the microphone.
Yeah, well, I had asked to get a list, but I didn't get a list of the things that were...
Well, I think I tried to explain to you, these are normal budgeted items as we go through the year, right, Kathy? So as they go out, we'll get the bids to accept, but the list would be very long. I mean, they're normal budgeted items that, you know, like supplies and things that are needed to run the whole school district throughout the year.
When they'll all come in at different times, and then we'll review the cost and then vote on them again.
Typically, the bids will come in. We're getting ready now to send the bids out. Once this is approved, probably within the next 2 weeks, we'll be advertising the bids. So we probably won't have these back in time for April. They'll continue in the May board meeting. So we'll do the advertising for 3 weeks. Then we'll pull the bids all together, sort out what's the low bid, present that to the board, and we do that as in one meeting. So it'll be at the May meeting. This will be for basically what it says there. When we talk about facilities and supplies, Mr. Loeffler gave his non-routine maintenance budget a few weeks ago. It will be all those items on there, things such as the toilet replacement, partitions, painting, carpeting, vehicles, mowers. It's the same process that we've used, I think, for the last 4 years.
Anyone else? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Sarnes?
The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for April 8th in the District Administration Office.
Thank you. The intermediate unit, Mrs. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Gunnell. The IU met on March 18th at 7 p.m. in the boardroom. Earlier in the evening, the IU hosted a student art gallery and reception. Each of 19 schools within Bucks County chose one student's artwork to exhibit. Grades 1 through 12 were represented. Each student was introduced and honored individually with a certificate and given the chance to say a few words. Our student artist was a 12th grader, William Gannon, who created a still life using pastels. I have the brochure if anyone's interested in seeing the presentation of the student's artwork. The board meeting followed at 7 p.m. with a presentation given on the programs and services provided by the IU for students with disabilities between the ages of 18 and 21 years. The programs are designed to facilitate their movement from school to post-school activities, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, adult service agencies, independent living, or community. Action items included approval of bills for payment, purchases, agreements with districts for strategic and comprehensive planning services, the Homeless Children's Initiative Region Number 8 agreements with Allentown School District and MCIU Number 23, superintendent searches, technology consulting services, budget transfers, etc. Contract negotiations were initiated, however, the attorney representing the IU moved to another firm shortly thereafter. The new attorney was approved. His name is Fred D'Angelo of the firm Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney. Mr. D'Angelo comes highly recommended from Dr. Glass and current board members familiar with the services he provides. Senate Bill 1085 was discussed, which is on the Senate voting calendar. The bill amends the public school code to revise the charter school law, allowing universities to open charter schools without school district approval. We are strongly urged to contact our senators to delay this vote. Again, that's Senate Bill 1085. Joanne Parati, who you met tonight, Director of Strategic Services of the IU and former President of the Women's Fund, is spearheading the hashtag Girl STEM program, a one-day science, technology, engineering, and mathematics conference to be held May 22nd at Delaware Valley College. Lastly, in other news, the IU is partnering with Central Block Sturtone on a fundraiser entitled Run, Walk, and Roll Together for Kids. It's a 5K, and as the title suggests, walkers, runners, rollers, including strollers and wheelchairs, are welcome to participate. The date is Saturday, May 10th. The goal is to raise $10,000, which will support teachers, kids, and grants. As of March 18th, 160 runners have already registered. Sponsorship opportunities are available. IU board members are planning to participate, including me, in the race. See or email me for information. That was a lot of reading. The next IU meeting is scheduled for April 15th at 7 p.m. at the Bucks County meeting. Thank you, Dr. Yoder.
Thank you, and good luck.
I'll be walking.
Personnel Committee, Mr. Deming.
We will have our next meeting on the 10th of April in conjunction with or following or preceding the student activities meeting. I do want to say that we did have a personnel meeting on the 12th of March, but it was on personnel matters, which cannot be publicly described at this time. So we will then meet again April 10th.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, and then the Policy Review Committee.
We had an interesting meeting on the 12th, and I have two motions. The first one is to recommend approval of the revised version of policy number 903, which has to do with public participation in these meetings.
We have a second to that motion. Moved by Mr. Deming and seconded by Mr. Bergomo. Or Mr. Casper. Mr. Casper, thank you. Mr. Casper, to approve the revised policy 903. Comments or questions from board members? This is the first reading. Yes.
Yes.
Here.
I have a comment.
Yes.
At the meeting, we talked about adding, at the policy review meeting, we talked about adding numbers under the guidelines under section 4. And so we have some numbers added. We have 4.1 up to 4.8. And I would like to recommend that we just add numbers for the remaining items under the guidelines, just so that when we reference policy, it's easier to know what section we're talking about. I just think there's a few more things about what the presiding officer may do, about recording, placards and banners.
Dr. Yarnell, I believe we can make those kinds of changes and bring it back without having to go through a first reading.
Okay. And so
I did talk to Dr. Brevard today. He said you could add that, and when we brought it for the second read, just for clarification, adding some more numbers.
Thank you.
And so you will add that to your
Yes, we
agenda?
will.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr.
And
Denny.
the second motion is to recommend approval of policy number 708.1, which is disposal of surplus property.
Do we have a second for that motion? Moved by Mr. Deming and seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the policy 708.1. Comments or questions from board members? None. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mr. Deming.
In conjunction with Dr. Bovard, we will schedule our next meeting, most likely next month.
Okay. Thank you. The Upper Bucks County Technical School Committee. Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. The Upper Bucks Tech School Board met on March 20th. A rather brief meeting. Renovation project was voted on to go out to bid. Bond resolution was passed. The true interest cost came in at 4.13, which was less than anticipated. The result is approximately $37,000 less per year for Pennridge, and that's on a 30-year bond. Student of the month for the tech school was Amber Klein, a Pennridge student. She's in healthcare careers. The tech school will be holding a hazardous household waste collection June 21st, 2014. There was a list that was sent to me today of accepted items. I can forward that to Mr. Ferry if put on the website. And the revised school calendar was approved. The tech school, the next meeting will be on April 17th at 7:30 at the Upper Bucks County Tech School.
Thank you. We will go on to the Technology Committee. Mr. Thompson.
We have not had a meeting in several months. The next meeting will be scheduled for April 7th, 2014 in the District Administration Hall.
Thank you. And Act 48, Mrs. Schmidt.
The Act 48 committee met on March 13th. The comprehensive plan was reviewed, which included the induction plan and the professional development plan. There was also a new workshop feedback form that was shared with the group. And there are two motions. First motion is to approve the Pennridge School District 2014-2017 Professional Education Act 48 plan.
We have a second to that motion.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Schmidt and seconded by Mr. Rugomo to approve the Act 48 Professional Education Plan. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mrs. Schmidt?
The next motion is to approve the Pennridge School District 2014-2017 induction plan.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller, and thank you for raising your hand. Mrs. Schmidt with the motion and Mrs. Miller as the second. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Mrs. Schmidt?
Next, Act 48 committee meeting is scheduled for May 15th, 2014 at 4 p.m. in the district office.
Thank you. Unfinished business. Anyone have, any board members have unfinished business that they'd like to discuss? Not? How about new business? Yes, Mr. Casper.
Well, I hope we can try to address the one part of Dr. Radigan's proposal that didn't come up when everyone was here, and that's maybe somehow figuring out how to get two middle schools on the track somewhere, and some way try to figure that out. After hearing Dr. Rudder speak to it a few weeks ago, that's been a long time. Those kids, there's a lot of kids go through both of those schools, and I know our money's tight, but maybe there's a way we can work on that. At least get a plan in place to start working on it instead of just mentioning it like this and then it goes under the carpet again. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. If not, the announcements. There was a special school board, or there will be a special school board meeting scheduled for April 8th, 2014. The next regular school board meeting is scheduled for April 28th, a Monday, at 7:30, and that will be in the district administration office. I presume the special school board meeting will as well. There were executive sessions held on both February 26th for the purpose of negotiations and on March 13th for the purpose of personnel issues and negotiations. At this point, comments or questions from guests. Please state your name and your district, and your municipality. If not, are there questions from the press? Mr. Rush, are you the press or are you just a late bloomer for this question and answer?
Sorry, no, I'm not the press.
That's supposed to be sleeping at the school board meetings, right?
I'll make it short, hopefully. Lee Rush, still from the Great Borough Purposely. I said earlier there's no accidents. This is a little interesting story. One of my favorite teachers died a few weeks ago, Mr. Leonard Knapp. He was here for a very long time at Pennridge. Some of you know the name. He used to be at Hilltown, and I think he went to another elementary, I forget where. But I knew him when I was 10 years old. And this teacher, Mr. Knapp, was into reptiles and snakes. Any of you know him? You remember Mr. Knapp? Any of you?
I'm not from here.
He used to have snakes in his classroom. It was fascinating. And he took us as 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds to New York City. I never forgot that I got to see New York by the grace of a teacher. My father was working too much or whatever. And when I heard his viewing was Friday night, I came home from work pretty tired. I wasn't going to go, but I thought I should go and honor him. You know, he really was a very important man in my life. So I went to St. Andrews, and I was always still thinking a little bit about our issue here with the field and our history. And it was so interesting because there on the table, they had pictures of him and his legacy with teaching. And there was an article from the News Herald when he was featured in the Know Your Community, and then the front page of the News Herald with his picture of the snakes. And right below it was a big story about the decision in 2008 to build this turf field. So I was standing there realizing, okay, I really was curious. I didn't remember, I don't have the memory. When the field was decided on, when the decision to build the turf field. So there it was, gave me the year. And I thought, oh, it's really interesting. Mr. Knapp told me one last thing, to just follow my gut, follow my instinct, go and do something when I really feel it. There was the article on the field. So that led me this past weekend to do a little more research on the year and the decision point of when tonight actually culminated and started in 2008 with the turf field. And I talked to Dr. Reed a little bit. Most people who have that history know that tonight was a long time coming, but it was a day of reckoning. It's been coming for 6 years to finish the project on the hill. And what I found in doing some research with the minutes of those summer meetings in 2008, it also was the same month, period, that we eliminated a counselor in our middle schools. And the position was taken up with an instructional support teacher. And I had a problem with that then, and I still do. And my comment tonight, and this is what I want to end with, is just to be mindful as these great decisions now have to be made about prioritizing. I think somebody used that word earlier about these priority issues we have to make with money. But a school district of this size and this stature with one social worker and one counselor in each middle school, at least given the information I've been tracking for years about the social and emotional health of our young people, there'll be a day of reckoning too with that ratio. And we'll have a town hall meeting shortly with our survey data that we've been tracking for years about kids and their health of assets and drug and alcohol use. And believe it or not, the things that happened in Colorado and Washington State and this summer in the state of Alaska regarding marijuana and its legalization is already affecting our 10 and 11-year-old brains, our 10 and 11-year-old students. We're finding that their attitudes towards pot is softening, which is an early distant warning sign for future use. So my point is, I guess, I just want to kind of put a stake in the ground about the support that we give kids going forward with their social, emotional health, public health issue in POD. It's going to affect them, it's going to affect how they develop, it will affect how they perceive the drug, and it affects their brain like we know now more than ever before. So those of us in education know that alcohol and other drug use is a serious issue that oftentimes doesn't get discussed until it's a crisis. So that's my point, is just to kind of realize that we always have these trade-offs about money, priorities, and I hope that becomes part of our conversation, these supports that we got to put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs.
Joan Cullen from Hilltown. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to speak again after the presentation on the stadium, so I just want to say I think it's a great plan. It's very thoughtful, and it combines everything that I think everybody wants, and they're going to come around to like it, so I appreciate you putting the effort into it. And the second thing is, I love the idea of sending a letter to the other school districts around the state to get them all together with us to improve the PSER situation, because that's something that we need to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Wilmore, Hilltown Township. Never ceases to amaze me how we spend money in this district. It's nice for everybody to get what they want, but I think we need to really, and it's too late now to do it, but to look at the people in this district that have fixed incomes. I think you're going to start noticing a lot more for sale signs as our taxes start going up. The stability of the community is no longer going to be a stable community. We have families that have been here for generations. There's many generations of them here. Can they afford to stay here any longer? In the future, our students that are here now, are they going to be able to afford to live in this community the way their parents have? I don't think so. We've seen it happen in other parts of the county. We've seen it happen in New Jersey, different districts there. And the kids can't move back because the taxes have gone up so much. Not because of a decision that was made now, but a decision that was made 20, 30 years previous, even 15 years previous. So that's something that when you go forward with spending, you might want to think about a little bit more. The other thing, also with finance, $25 for a 17-year-old to run a sound system is absurd. I know it's on the facilities use form that somebody who runs a sound system, this person running the place is getting charged $25. If we're paying a student $25 to run the sound system, we're losing money. There's payroll taxes to pay, there's insurances to pay, there's workers' compensation to pay. Who's paying that? And I think it's absurd that somebody who runs a sound system gets paid more than somebody that drives buses. It was just on the same list, a bus driver, substitute bus drivers getting paid $20, and they have the lives of our children in their hands. And a student that's 17 years old, 18 years old, 16 years old is getting paid more than they are. That's a big insult. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments or questions from the press? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.